In a windswept park in Dublin, two dancers stand frozen in time. Their youth is preserved forever in memory of 48 young people who died in the most devastating fire that Ireland has ever seen. This is the story of those who find out how fires happen so that they may prevent them from happening again.
The Stardust was an event. There was always a good atmosphere, you know, because there was kind of a buzz about the place, you know. It was the place that everyone wanted to be. When the nightclub was on, you know, everybody kind of came from all directions. If you had cousins, you knew you'd meet them there. You know, it was ritual, if you like. So we'd all organised to meet there on Valentine's night.
On February the 14th, 1981, Jimmy Fitzpatrick was just 16. He and his friends were among hundreds of young people jam-packed in the Stardust. It was 20 to 2 in the morning.
There was a bit of pandemonium on stage, and the DJ did this kind of announcement out that, ladies and gentlemen, don't panic, there's a small fire in the premises and we've got it under control. So within seconds, this bouncer had to run in with a fire extinguisher, and he went to the area where the fire was. Well, at that point I thought we stand a good chance of getting out, because it didn't look that big. It didn't look like it was uncontrollable to somebody with a fire extinguisher. The flames were getting higher and higher. He dropped that and he shot off. So with that, within seconds, the lights are gone.
As the flames started spreading inside the Stardust, the first firefighters arrived outside the club. So too did a local priest.
The first thing I could hear was the sound of breaking glass, and I didn't know what that was. It was obvious there was a fire. Of course, you could see the flames inside the windows, but you could also see people trying to break out. I thought initially it was the heat of the flames that was making the glass pop. There were bars on the windows so that people actually couldn't get out, and they were screaming and shouting, people pouring out of the building.
People were desperate to get out, and others were desperate to get in. Jimmy Fitzpatrick had escaped once already, but he went back through the flames for his friends.
There was people pushing in, shoving, and mayhem. You could see the smoke bellowing down. It was thick black smoke, you know, you could just taste it. It was that thick, you could, you know, taste it in your mouth like you were chewing it. It was burning. It was also so dense and hot that it just basically burned you, you know, there and then. I couldn't say a thing. I had my hands over my face because it was suffocating. I made a run for it. At this stage, I had no idea which way I was facing. I could have run straight into the fire. I ran the opposite direction through a row of seats. I don't know how I got through them. And I fell on the floor, on the dance floor. Now I knew because I was on the wooden floor. But because there's so many inches of air down there, I just got a good gust of air again and just took a deep breath. And at that stage, the noise was deafening, like the screams and the flames and the wood crackling and everything else. I just made the big dash again and heard these people just kicking and kicking. I had no idea where it was. Could have been kicking a wall for all I knew. But it would turn out to be another exit door over the far side of the building, you know, and that's when the door just blew open.
All around the Stardust, the injured and dying fell out into the night. As ambulance crews raced the survivors to hospital, firefighters brought out the first bodies. In 10 short minutes of fire, 200 people would be injured and 48 youngsters would be killed. When the fire was damped down and it was safe to go back into the Stardust, the fire chief went looking for the priest to say prayers for the dead still inside.
So he brought me in, and we could see these, what I always think of as the like the dummies they have in the windows of a shop, you know, where you put the clothes on to dress them up and you can turn them into all different shapes. But it was just like that. People, these figures, because all the hair had been singed, these figures lying in all different shapes, hands up, head bent forward, two people clasping each other, all brown, all brown.
At 8 o'clock the next morning, Father Heber finally went home. As thoughts of the Stardust flashed through his head, he started to think he'd been dreaming.
I was going slightly crazy, I think, wondering, was this just one huge nightmare? And I always remember the simple thing. I was frozen with the cold anyhow, because I'd been out in the open a lot of the night, and the shock, I suppose. But I had this anorak, still had it on. I was sitting in front of the fire, as I say, and I just lifted up the sleeve of the anorak, and I smelled the smoke. I said, "It happened. It happened. You were there."
The carnage at the Stardust was Dublin's worst ever disaster. In any big fire, there are questions that have to be answered. Why did the fire spread so quickly? How could so many have died? Piecing together the puzzle of where and how the fire started was the job of investigator Seamus Quinn.
The area was like a sauna at the time that I went into it. The fire brigade were still damping down, and the steam was rising from the debris. The club itself was totally burnt out. The seating was totally burnt out. The tables in front of the seating totally burnt out. Carpet wall tiles totally burnt away. The ceiling, suspended ceiling, had been pulled down. The lighting had been pulled down with the suspended ceiling. There was total devastation in that area.
Most witnesses told Seamus Quinn that the fire was first spotted in the club's west seating alcove. But when they were asked to describe it, he was faced with a conflict of evidence.
Some witnesses saw flames dancing some inches above the rear row or rear tier of seating. Others saw a coat on fire on top of the rear row of seating. Others saw the fire spreading almost to the ceiling from the tops of the seating and involving the carpet tiles on the wall.
To confirm or dismiss what the witnesses told him, Seamus Quinn used a basic technique, a painstaking search, sifting through the layers of debris left by the fire.
We started sifting by hand, fingertip searching, which took us right through over a period of 2.5 days before we completed that search. We looked for a coat in the debris, but we found nothing to say that there was a coat there. We found no material, we found no buttons, so we had to eliminate a coat being on the back of a seat.
2 full days of searching revealed no clue to the cause of the fire. It was time for another tool of the investigator's trade, practical testing.
We took a row of seats and we placed a lighted cigarette on that seating to establish whether or not this cigarette would set fire to the seating. In fact, the cigarette went out on 3 tests.
Then he tried something else. He slashed the seat cover, exposing the foam underneath. Then he put a flame to it.
In all cases and in all tests, the seat took light and continued to burn and burnt out. And we were only left with one possibility after that the fire was started by a person setting fire to a slashed seat with the aid of a lighted match or a cigarette lighter.
So that was the most likely way the fire had begun. But that was just the start of the investigation. It was the speed of the fire which baffled the Stardust investigators.
One of the bouncers actually saw the fire. He went back for a fire extinguisher, and yet when he got back with the fire extinguisher, it was uncontrollable. I could not understand this.
To resolve this key question, the Irish came here. This was the hangar of the world's largest airship, the R-101, which in 1930 fell out of the sky in flames. Inside this huge space, Bill Malhotra built reconstructions of seats in the Stardust. Then he set fire to them.
Where the seats were joined together, the fire would spread from one seat to the next. Where there was a separation between the seat, the fire did not find it possible to transfer from one seat to the next seat.
The walls of the Stardust had been lined with carpet tiles. Did these hold the key to the problem?
We made up a representation of an alcove which could accommodate 3 seats. It had 2 sides, a ceiling, and open front.
Then they prepared to light it. The wall tiles were soon ablaze, and as they burned, Bill Malhotra noticed something remarkable.
Because of the nature of the tiles, they produced burning drops, and these fell down and dropped on the top of the next seat. And that was the first indication of the seat in combination with the carpet tiles could have caused the seat across the aisle to become involved in the fire.
The investigators had solved the problem of how the Stardust fire spread sideways, but still they lacked the final piece of the jigsaw. Why had this deadly fire spread so fast from the back to the front of the club? In search of the final clue, the investigators built a full-scale reconstruction of the Stardust's west alcove. It was as accurate as they could make it, with identical seats specially shipped over from Dublin. What happened when they lit it caught everyone by surprise.
We had the whole rear tier burning within 1.5 to 2 minutes of the start of the fire. Very quickly after that, the heat was sufficient to cause the spontaneous ignition of the seats in the tier in front. And it was a matter of a few seconds only after that until the whole of the 5 row of seats started to burn.
Everybody else! Absolutely clear! Everybody else!
It was as if we were repeating the fire which occurred at the Stardust.
The investigators had shown at first hand all the links in the chain of a deadly developing fire. The slash seat, the carpet tiles, the spontaneous ignition. The puzzle of Ireland's worst fire had finally been pieced together, and lessons to prevent it from happening again had been learned.